All right, guys, so in this video, we're going to be talking about real exchange rates, okay? Well, we'll talk about nominal exchange rates and real exchange rates. Why do we really want to know what real exchange rates are? Well, it's a key determinant in how much a country imports and exports. Real exchange rates matter. All right, so savings, investment, and that international capital flows, right? Those capital inflows, capital outflows are all inextricably linked. All right. So so you guys remember chapter 8? I certainly remember teaching it to you. And I remember always having to say, in a closed economy, in a closed economy, in a closed economy, because we were really missing a big part of the economy. And that was the fact that we trade with others and we invest in other countries and they invest in our country. All right, but I suppose it was a stepping stone, right? But in chapter 8, we pretended we were a closed economy, that our national income, our Y, our national income, our real GDP, equals our C, our I, and our G in a closed economy. And if we want to mix that about, then we could mix it about by saying our investment equals our income, what we consume, and our government expenditures. And that's going to equal, right, what we earn minus what we can spend on consumption and what we spend on government expenditures. What do we have left after that? It's called our savings, our national savings. Okay, so our savings equaled investment. In a closed economy, that is true. It is true in a closed economy that our savings equals our investment. But we're not in a closed economy. We're in an open economy, right? And so we have to factor in our net exports, right? Net exports, absolutely. And so therefore our savings does not equal our investment. Our savings equals our investment plus net exports. And as you guys know, net exports equals what? That's right, net capital outflows. So another way to state it is here. Savings equals our investment, what we invest domestically here in our own country, plus what we send out and invest in other countries. Our savings equals our investment domestically, as well as money that comes out of our country to invest in other countries. All right, so you may want to pause the video here and just kind of go through these identities and see if you can follow the logic. I'll go through one of them though, I guess just the trade surplus one here on the one on the right. Let's just go through the logic one more time. Lots of repetition, I'm sorry, but anyways, so your exports are greater than your imports, right? So that means that your net exports are greater than zero, okay? So here we go, right? So that basically means that your income, like your GDP, your nation's income, right, is greater than what we spent domestically, okay? Right? Our net exports are greater than zero. So that means that because our net exports contribute to our GDP here, they contribute to Y, right? So that means our Y, our GDP, must be greater than what we spent domestically in consumption and investment domestically and government spending domestically. So that means that our saving is greater than our investment domestically. Okay, this is domestic. So that means that we have a net capital outflow, right? Capital is leaving the country and it is being invested in other countries. Anyways, try to see if you can get the logic of the trade deficit one. Okay, so we have looked at the international flow of goods and capital. We will now look at the prices at which these transactions take place, all right? So there are two important international prices that are discussed here. the nominal exchange rate, and the real exchange rate. Let's talk about this now. What's the nominal exchange rate? Well, the nominal exchange rate is the rate at which a person can trade currencies. When we say nominal exchange rate, it's like how many US dollars can I get with 1 Canadian dollars? Well, not even 1 US dollar, right? So these are the nominal rates down here at the bottom. As of today, with 1 Canadian dollar, you can get 5 Chinese yuan, 17 Mexican pesos, Indian rupees, 54 Indian rupees. Anyways, you get the idea, right? And you can calculate it the other way as well. Like, for example, with 1 US dollar here, it takes 71 cents, 71 US dollars, 71 US cents, excuse me, to buy 1 Canadian dollar. So how much would it cost for a Canadian to buy 1 US dollar? If I wanted to have 1 US dollar in my pocket, how many Canadian dollars would it take? How do you calculate that? 1 divided by 0.71231. And if you were to put that in your calculator, you would get $1.40. All right, so it would take $1.40 CAD in order to get 1 USD. Not looking so hot right now, I guess, the Canadian dollar. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean that it's kind of low. But wait a second, teacher. What happens if the Canadian dollar was all of a sudden to rise? What would happen? Would that hurt our economy? Or would that help our economy? If the Canadian dollar all of a sudden were to rise, that would hurt us, right? It would hurt our net exports, hurt our GDP. One of the things, oil right now is, I just looked, it changes every day so quickly, but I'm talking about Western Canada Select, our oil right now is trading, not WTI, that's Texas. I'm talking about WCS. You could look it up. 1 barrel of oil is equal to about $10. Well, when I say dollars, I mean US dollars. We're getting 10 US dollars for a barrel of our oil. And I would have to say that, the one at least bright spot in it all, I guess, is the fact that we have a very low Canadian dollar right now. So 10 US dollars is at least giving us 14 Canadian dollars. Anyways, for what it's worth. If the Canadian dollar was much higher, we'd even be getting less money for our oil. So about appreciation or depreciation, you have to remember, we might want a strong dollar when we want to go traveling, you want to go to Vegas, you want to go here, or if you want to buy imported goods, yeah, they are cheaper when we have a strong Canadian dollar, absolutely. But it does end up hurting our net exports and our GDP. So, when our economy does poorly, when our economy does have trouble, the Canadian dollar tends to weaken, and that's a self-correcting mechanism, right? It can help later on down the road by stimulating exports. So as we can see, just take a look at pause it if you'd like. These are the trends of the value of the Canadian dollar to the US dollar and other currencies around. And as we can see, absolutely, the value of the Canadian dollar has definitely gone down to the US dollar. And let's look at the Japanese yen. It's been a little bit of a mixed bag, but it's actually going up a little bit. The Japanese yen has gone down. These are 2015 numbers here. And I happen to know that the value of the yen has increased over the last few months because of the coronavirus. So the value of Canadian dollar then would be going like that, right? The value of the Canadian dollar would be going down as the yen increases. Anyways, these exchange rates are important. Let's talk about real exchange rate. So if nominal exchange rate is just like how much can I exchange for another currency? How many US dollars can I get with my Canadian dollars? It's all about the currency. The real exchange rate is the rate at which a person can trade goods of one country for goods of another. You ever gone to another country and bought something and you're like, wow, that's so cheap. I could never buy this in Canada for that much. This is what we're talking about, the real exchange rate. Nominal exchange rate is exchanging currencies. Real exchange rate is exchanging goods of one country for goods of another country. So it's kind of a way for us to compare how expensive things are in one country compared to how expensive things are in another country. So why does the real exchange rate matter? Well, it is a key determinant in how much a country can export and how much a country can import. All right? So we calculate the real exchange rate by calculating what the nominal exchange rate times the domestic price divided by the price in the foreign country, in the foreign currency. Let's go over a working example. A bushel of Canadian wheat sells for $200. That's Canadian dollars. And a bushel of Russian wheat sells for 1,600 rubles. The nominal exchange rate is 4 rubles per dollar. What's the real exchange rate? Where is the product the cheapest? All right, so what do? Well, we follow the formula. And the formula basically says the real exchange rate equals the nominal X rate times the domestic price divided by the foreign price. And so in that case, the nominal exchange rate right now is 4 rubles per dollar. We've been given that. So 4 times the domestic price, what it is here in Canadian dollars, $200 a bushel. And so when we analyze this numerator here, and the numerator is basically just the value of the domestic good, our good here, domestic good, $200, in the foreign currency, right? And so we're just taking the value of the domestic good in foreign currency and divide it by the value of the foreign good. And so what do we get? Well, if we do the math here, we get basically 800 on the numerator and 1,600 on the denominator. So it's 800 rubles divided by 1,600 rubles. And that's really important, right? So Canadian wheat in Russian currency is 800 rubles a bushel. But in Russia, it's 1,600 rubles per bushel. So that means a half of bushel of Russian wheat per bushel of Canadian wheat. So it means our wheat's a lot cheaper. Canadian wheat is half as expensive as Russian wheat, right? That's good. So what would happen then? Well, the real exchange rate, our goods, our wheat is half as expensive as the Russian wheat. So therefore the demand for Canadian wheat would rise and the demand for Russian wheat would fall. So you can see now that real exchange rates can really impact our imports and our exports. All right, guys, so this is pretty easy stuff, right? And of course, you'll have a formula sheet on your final exam, so it's pretty easy just to pluck in. But when studying the economy as a whole, macroeconomists focus typically on overall prices. So we're not talking about the prices of wheat or the prices of bananas. Macroeconomists focus on the price levels, right? So therefore, P here is really the Canadian CDN. Is that Canadian? CPI. Okay, the Canadian CPI. Don't you just love acronyms? The Canadian Consumer Price Index. Okay, it's the price of a Canadian basket of goods, right? And so we take the nominal exchange rate here, E, multiply it by the Canadian CPI, and then divide it by the price of the same index, right, for a foreign basket of goods. Okay? And therefore we can see if goods are really cheaper in the United States, as often Canadians think. You often hear about that. Oh, it's so cheap. I've heard it before. I don't know if people are saying that right now because the nominal exchange rate is so high. But anyways, a lot of people, sometimes their perceptions are that things are cheaper in the United States. What do you guys think? Are things cheaper in the United States? What are your perceptions? All right, guys. Well, you can see in this graph that at least, since okay, this time here, right? This time here, it's pretty much been the same. The real exchange rate, like the prices of goods in America and the prices of goods in Canada, factoring in the exchange rates and everything, the prices have pretty much been the same, haven't they? The prices of goods have been the same. And when there's been a change in the exchange rate, like the nominal exchange rate, the value of the currency, then the value of the real exchange rate has followed. So there hasn't been much of a difference. And that makes sense because, hey, if something like if an American is just looking for the cheapest whatever product and Canada's product is cheaper, why not order it from Canada? Why not? And so the demand for that Canadian product goes up. And so that ends up increasing the prices in the end, right? Now, before NAFTA, you guys know NAFTA, right? The North American Free Trade Agreement. And I think that actually came in maybe here, 1989, if I remember correctly. It might be wrong on that, but anyways, then there were no problems getting products crossing the border. But before that, maybe there was more of an issue. Oh, the product's in Canada, but it's harder to get. I got to fill out customs forms. I got to worry about this. I got to worry about that. There's barriers. There's tariffs. And so that's one thing about trade agreements, right? It bridges the gap between real and nominal exchange rates. And that's why when Canada and America with free trade, it's almost like it's one economy in a sense. Our real exchange rates should be the same. A Starbucks coffee in Seattle should cost the same as in Vancouver. All right. So anyways, kind of interesting stuff though. I know I've been to lots of countries where things were cheaper. There were like far away countries though, right? Like if you go to Indonesia and living in Indonesia, You know, the real exchange rate is very different. I was made like $2,000 a month or $2,500 a month. I lived like a king, because I could get a meal in a restaurant for $1. Can't do that here. The real exchange rate is much lower in Indonesia as it is here. All right, so let's do some practice. So let's define nominal exchange rate and real exchange rate. What is it, guys? Pause the video. What is that? All right, so nominal exchange rate is just the rate that you can trade currency from one country for the currency of another country. That's what nominal exchange rate. But real exchange rate is the rate that you can trade goods and services between countries. Okay? So number 2, if the nominal exchange rate goes from, so 1 Canadian dollar equals 100 yen per dollar to 120 yen per $1. Has the dollar appreciated or depreciated? The dollar has appreciated because now it takes 120 yen to buy $1, when before it only took 100 yen to buy the dollar. All right? So the dollar has appreciated. All right, guys. So here's the question. Okay, we're supposed to calculate the real exchange rate, okay? And so E, which is the nominal rate, is 10 pesos per 1 Canadian dollar. The price of tall Starbucks latte in Canada is $3. Sounds actually a little bit cheap. Anyways, and then the price in Mexico is 24 pesos, okay, for the same latte, all right? So in other words, when you go to Mexico and you're looking up in Starbucks and you look at the menu board, it says 24 pesos on it, okay? So it says, A, what is the price of a Canadian latte measured in pesos? What are they really asking for here? Which part of the formula? Yeah, they're asking just for the denominator, right? So anyways, so we have 10 times, right? Because that's the nominal rate. E is 10 times 3. That's going to give us 30. Okay, so I'll just go P star or whatever. Okay, equals 30 over P asterisk, right? So that's what it is. It's 30, all right? So what is the price of a Canadian latte measured in pesos? It's 30 pesos. In Canada, that is 30 pesos, okay? But how does it compare? All right, how does it compare? Well, in Mexico, it's only 24 pesos, and that was given to us, right? So what's the answer? What is the real exchange rate? And if you do the math, that's going to equal 1.25. 1.25. All right? So basically, you can get 25% more lattes. So you can get 1.25 Mexican latte per Canadian latte. All right? So, I mean, in other words, lattes are cheaper in Mexico than they are in Canada. All right? What do you think? Would this last? Probably, yeah. I mean, it's not like in Canada we could go out and get all these lattes shipped to Canada, right? That's why things, especially that cannot be transported, like meals, going out for dinner, things like that cannot be really transported and will often be very, very inexpensive. But things like, I don't know, smartphones and televisions, things like that, or wheat or gold or oil or things like that tend to be the same price, right? Because they can be transported. And if, hey, wheat, for example, is cheaper in Indonesia, then I'm going to buy my wheat from Indonesia. If my wood is cheaper in Malaysia, then I'm going to get my wood sent from Malaysia, right? But lattes, little hard to ship. So that means that, yeah, there might be this real exchange rate difference in lattes between Canada and Mexico may last.